Okay. So I just want, because I know everybody on here is new, sometimes you will have clients that will insist on working with a lender, whether it be a friend of a friend or whether or not, you know, it's a credit union or whatever. I guess I just can't stress the importance enough of being able to contact that person like 24/7. Like pretty much when you guys are working, they should be accessible, especially in this market. And for that very same reason, you know, Ron, you know, that very same scenario that Ron took you through, that quick turnaround time. Because can you imagine if you were working with a friend of a friend, or my aunt is, you know, with some Joe Schmo bank or an internet bank or whatever, it may not have worked out in his favor. So guys, that's just something to keep in mind, and that's something to think about.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. It was, I think, what actually, besides the price. So, yeah, it was my first deal.
I know.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
So the nice part is they have a house to sell as well. So
Nice. Nice.
This is interesting. We lost Jeffrey.
Told you he was running. He's like, up, Chris and Kim are on. I'm out of here.
So anybody else have any questions about that? It was fun, and it was funny that I was able to do a lot of that from the golf course. I had even contacted Chris because the listing agent threw me a curve and said, hey, I really need the COVID disclosure and the fair housing disclosure with this package. And I said, well, I don't have access to my computer right now, and is it okay if I get those to you later tonight? And she said yes. So then I had to call off Chris and said, no, we're all good.
Yes. Well, and I'm going to interject in there that that agent did not need your fair housing, nor did they need your COVID disclosure. Those are for you and your buyers and for the office to make sure that they're there, but you provided them. That's not something that is necessary, is not really supposed to go with the offer. But they asked for it and you provided them.
Yeah, whenever I got back. So I provided them at, like, I don't know, probably 8 o'clock that evening. So that was plenty good enough. But we had attorney's approval within, I think, a day from both sides. So that was good.
And we just lost Jeffrey again. He is just flitting in and out tonight.
So I guess I'll say, does everybody on this call know each other?
No,
I
probably
don't
not.
know anybody.
So I'll start. I'm Ron Stevens. I started in March, right before the COVID shutdown. And so this was my first deal. So it's been a few months, but I took advantage of all the training. I'm loving it so far, and look, whenever I can pull away, which is 3 days, do this full time. So.
Okay. So I'll call you guys out. How's this? How's that? How about you, Sherry?
Hi, I'm Sherry. I started, basically, I got my license August 5th, and I have been training and working with Jeff. He's my mentor, trying to learn a lot. It's a lot of information, but it's exciting. And I'm really looking forward to actually getting into it. And everybody's great at the office. I mean, I'm so excited. It's a fabulous place to be.
Okay. How about you, Tiffany?
Hi. So I'm Tiffany. I joined Keller Williams on Monday. I've had my license for 2 weeks. August 4th. And thank you. And I'm excited. I'm excited to learn and get moving and sell some houses.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, Justin, you're up.
All right, so my name's Justin. I've been at KW for 3 weeks, and I got my license two and a half weeks ago, something like that. This is actually the first class that I attended. I've been watching the boot camps on YouTube, but this is the first live class that I've actually been to. And I actually put in my first purchase offer 2 days ago, and unfortunately they lost it, but it was definitely a good experience.
Cool.
Yep.
Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Shaka. I onboarded with Kim when I was actually taking classes. I've only had my license for, I believe, 2 weeks, but I've met with a few people in the office, so just starting to get to know everyone. And yeah, just actually got my launch partner today, so excited to keep learning and get into this.
Okay, Yvonne.
Hi, everybody. I was graciously invited to the meeting, and I passed my test 2 weeks ago, and I'm in the process of licensing, but I have to pick a broker. So I was invited by Kim and Jeffrey to join in and experience this mastermind. So nice to meet everybody, and I'm happy that you guys all got your licenses and have started and have made sales and purchase offers, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jeffrey, since you keep seeming to disappear, we decided that we'd have everybody introduce themselves.
That's perfect.
So I'm calling them out. Okay, Dustin, it's you.
How's everyone doing tonight? I'm Dustin.
Good.
I started 2 weeks ago with Keller Williams with Kimberly. Chris is my launch partner. And this is my first meeting as well. And just looking forward to see where this takes me.
Nice.
And Mr. Malone, you
Hi.
new agent, tell them
Yeah.
who you are.
I started in 1976. Anybody on this call wasn't even born yet. I came to Keller Williams about 6 weeks ago, and I just got on this to see what it's all about.
Okay, so we're through everybody now, Jeff. Are you going to stay here?
Well, I'm on my hotspot now. Spectrum keeps dropping in our neighborhood, so.
Oh, no.
Maybe you should find a realtor and move.
You know what, Bob?
You're going to have to take me out of my house in a body bag.
That's what they all say.
Yeah. So anyways, Ron, you finished your...
I was going to say, have you checked if you have green light in your area?
It's very close, but not quite here yet.
Gotcha.
But
Green
trust
light,
us,
awesome.
when it happens, we will be switching.
No, for sure.
So it's at the entrance of our neighborhood, but we're only at 90%. So we got a little ways to go. So
Start door knocking, so you got to sign it.
yeah. So Chris or Kim or Bob, talking about being on the other side of a challenging deal, maybe with a challenging agent. Do you have any tips for our new agents?
I'm going to say I've been pretty lucky to have good agents on the other side. Bob, you've been in this a lot longer than I have. I know you've got some
I think, you know, I'd never want to define anybody as a bad agent. But I think what is most challenging is when you get an agent that's not communicative and doesn't respond to questions, doesn't respond to emails, doesn't respond to text messages, doesn't return phone calls. You know, when you're in a deal with somebody, you got to realize that, you know, the buyer agent, the seller agent, the buyer attorney, the seller attorney, the buyer, the seller are all going in the same direction. And if one of those people, and especially if it's the other agent, is going in a different direction, it's really hard to keep everything on the rails. That's, to me, the, you know,
Yeah.
most things can be figured out if everybody works at it. But when you got one of the players who's absent, it becomes really awful.
So communication is key.
Absolutely.
One of the things I always tell people, I've never sold houses, but coming from an admin perspective, somebody who has been the person that had to communicate sometimes with a more difficult agent or client, the thing that I always had at the back of my mind is maybe they've not, you know, done this before, or maybe they're a fairly new agent. Try to come at them with a little bit of love, understanding that, you know, especially now it's difficult. People want things yesterday, and people are fighting over inventory. But at the end of the day, I always say that if a buyer really wants to buy and a seller really wants to sell, it's going to happen. And when those two things are not at 100%, that's when you have the wheels falling off the cart. I always say that no matter what it is, it can be overcome. But as soon as that buyer says, or has that doubt that says, you know, there's other houses out there, I don't really need this one. Or if you have a seller that says, you know, I don't really have to sell my house, that's when, you know, generally things go wrong.
Exactly. So Chris knows this because, was it yesterday? Yes, yesterday. I received an offer on a listing at, well, they looked at it at 6 o'clock the night before, sent a text at 8 that they were writing an offer. I had the offer in hand at 10. We accepted at 10:15. It was, the other agent had it to the attorneys and back to us at 10:45, and by 11:45, both attorneys had approved the contract.
That's
Wow.
unbelievable.
Like that doesn't normally happen, but she, I mean,
holy cow. Like
so,
never.
Right. So when, you know, so we have 4 parties all really motivated to keep things moving. It's, you know, it's great. So anything else that you can think of, Chris?
So I will say one of the most interesting things I had, it wasn't necessarily an agent that was non-communicative. They were just not trained. And I got an offer that was half filled out. And I'm just looking at it going, okay, what do I do with this? And every time I would, and all I got was the offer document. And I said, where's the rest of the documents? And he said, what? And so as soon as I said, these are the other ones that I need, it's like, okay, I got them. So he knew how to use the tools. And one day I went to see Karen Hilbert and I said, okay, tell me about backup offers. I was pretty new at the time. And because I'm really concerned about this one. And she said, well, maybe they just haven't been trained. And so one time when we were talking, I said, so I have to ask you a question. It was a little, made me a little nervous to do it. But I said, so it seems like you haven't done many of these. And he said, no, not really. And I said, you know, I'm with Keller Williams. We do great training. And honestly, within 2 days, he was with Keller Williams.
Oh, wow. That's great. Makes all the difference in the world.
Oh, yeah.
All the difference in the world.
Right. And he knew how to use things like Transaction Desk, but he did not know
how to put it together.
Nope.
Oh.
And so that, as Kim will tell you, is a way to get people in your downline.
Yes, you have to be careful. You have to be careful. You have to be careful though, because you never want to, if you tell somebody that they don't know what they're doing or whatever, there's a lot of people that take, that take offense to that.
Right.
Because
Well, and
maybe
that,
they feel like they do and they don't know what they don't know. So you got to be very careful with that. But, there are ways, like once you're through the transition, just because something is maybe not your job, like it's maybe, you're working with the seller and something comes through that's not really your job, like to get a document to the attorneys or whatever. I always find if you're willing to just kind of, go that extra mile, you can normally smooth things out and kind of, have a good working relationship. And at the end of the day, that's what you want to get the transaction to go through.
right. Well, in this one, it wasn't that, I challenged them. I just, it took a while before I, asked the question, but it's like, it seems like you haven't done these because every time, almost at every step, I had to tell him exactly what document needed to be done, and then it would get done. So yeah. So in the end, they got trained.
So are we ready to move on to home staging?
And
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna ask Bob and Chris. Have you used a stager at any of your listings?
I have not.
I have once or twice on a couple of very expensive listings, but generally I do it myself.
Right. My my Roland's Crossing house in Pittsford was, Chris knows this. I walked in and it was a 5,000 square foot house, and they literally had a table, a couch, a love seat, and a coffee table, and then beds in the bedrooms. That was about it. And I showed up with 4 carloads of stuff. Thank God I live around the corner. And if you look at the pictures on that listing, most of everything that you see in that house is from mine.
Oh my God.
So, because they didn't want to pay a stager. I was like, let's just stage the first floor and, the house will shine. They didn't want to. And so I had to do something for the photos because it looked vacant. And that's never good.
So question for you would be, how do you bring that up to someone? Like, I think that your house needs to be staged without being rude.
So, you want to start with compliments, of course. You have such a beautiful home. And then I kind of feathered in some statistics of, how a staged home sells normally higher than a vacant, empty house. And they were going to be moving. They were relocating. So they were going to be out. So at some point, the house was going to be totally empty. And it's a big house. And it didn't show well empty. But we made it work. And it took a while, but we got it under contract. I believe that they would have probably gotten about 20,000 more than they did had they staged it. The feedback was, we can't visualize what we would do in this room, or we're not really sure how we would use the formal living room, things like that. And it was a very traditional colonial with the formal living, dining, great room, office. It was a pretty typical Pittsburgh colonial. So it really would have benefited them to spend the few $1,000s to stage it. So I guess basically you want to keep the compliments coming, and then you want to just talk about the numbers of where you think their house would sell staged. Now, I always say I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if this, if it really, because the buyers determine the price. But that would be where I would start. Now, this couple there's certain couples that I wouldn't probably have that conversation with, just knowing like their personality. This couple was very much, what can we do to sell this quickly and at a very good price? So they had opened up that conversation themselves.
I know what some agents will do when they're challenged, like you, Jeffrey, is they'll have a stager come in to consult with the people, so that it's not coming from the listing agent, but it's coming from someone else. And I'm pretty sure in Harlan's, one of his foundations, that he said that's what he does in a lot of cases.
Yeah, there are several stagers who you can pay a consulting fee, and they'll come in and go through the house and tell the seller what you should do. And their goal is, of course, to get hired by the seller, but they still provide that service, and it often helps.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's not a matter of not enough furniture. Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah.
And things need to
That's
be
what I was gonna say.
redistributed through the house. And
Or
I
in
always say,
a pod.
yeah, well, that too. And I always say, as you start packing, you can sometimes fit more in a box than what's on the shelf. And so all of a sudden, 7 boxes make your basement look huge because now everything's not crammed onto these shelves. So it's interesting. I have not had a client actually use a stager yet. I've had one that did use a console, and it worked out quite well for them because they had a lot of furniture, so they had a lot to work with. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So so how many of you are in the middle of Ignite?
I've started to look at classes that are recorded already.
Okay, so part of Ignite was you had to see a certain number of houses. I want to say it was like 10 a week, if I'm remembering correctly. And so as a new agent, you have some time, if you're full-time, to go to open. Agents can go to open houses because they're normally on the weekends. And you walk through and you start to see things that you as an agent or even as a buyer are catching. And that's how you start to, I would say, train your eye on what's working at a listing and what's not working at a listing. And that's really helpful as you go into listing appointments. It's also really helpful to educate yourself on a lot of different things in a home. And the more you see, the more you'll be able to point out to a seller, and that brings value. My Pittsford sellers were very much, they're like, well, we've done a lot of high-end upgrades. Well, their high-end upgrades were really expensive window treatments, and they were incredibly expensive. But I said, I love your custom drape. Not sure if another buyer would, because they're very personal. And they agreed. We left them up, but I was already working through what a disruption at an open house would look like if somebody was saying, I don't like the curtains. I just pointed out that the window shades were very much upgraded and had, motorized mechanisms, and so they felt like, oh, okay, so that's where the money was spent, and I can buy my own curtains. So I would recommend that you go online and just pick randomly 10 houses and just look at them and see what you think, or how it would show better. The other thing that we've talked about previously is always professional photos, or doing it yourself versus professional. Bob, do you use a photographer, or do you do your own pictures?
Oh no, I totally use a photographer.
Okay, yeah, so do
Yeah.
I.
I can't. No. The good pictures are worth their weight in gold.
So most buyers are buying a house online. They show up to look at it to confirm what they already know.
Yeah.
So the listing that went under contract on Tuesday, the seller was pushing for me to do my own photos. And I said, you're above, you're looking for above 400,000 in Pittsford. And I am not confident enough that my photos are going to sell your house. It was a difference of waiting one day to list it. And I said, I strongly urge you to be patient, have the photos taken today, and we'll list it tomorrow. We listed it. Their comment was, wow, our house looks amazing. You were right. And then when it sold, or went under contract, my response to them when they said thanks, I said, was it worth the wait of one day for really great photos? And they said, absolutely. So obviously we have to be obedient to our buyers and sellers, but sometimes educating them as to the importance of a certain thing. And I always point out, like, well, you're not paying for this. I'm paying
Yeah.
for this. I'm investing in your home, your sale. It's not you. This isn't me making you do it. I'm taking the initiative, and I'm committed to seeing this transaction through and getting you the most money for your home. And Sherry can comment because she was at one of the open houses for Straub Road in Greece, and the pictures make the house look amazing. It is not that amazing in person. So
How much do pictures typically cost?
it depends on the size of the house. 125, 145. If you add a Matterport or a virtual tour, you're adding $70, $80. It depends on the photographer. That's about, I would say, the average.
Yeah.
Bob, who do you use for photos?
Sometimes Pat Bear, and sometimes a guy named Dave from Webster. And they both charge about the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have drones, and that's one of the reasons I use them, because sometimes I want some kind of a more to show more landscaping, or if there's an in-ground pool or some kind of special feature, they can really get a good picture of that.
Yeah, aerial seems to work a lot better too for those nicer places like that.
Yeah.
Right, you just have to make sure the roof is in good shape.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to do an aerial.
That's a good way to find out if it is, though.
So some of the things that I tell my sellers that I think make a difference, and I could be wrong, but in my listing packet, they have like a listing checklist of things that I would recommend that they do. They're very simple. Leave your outside lights on. If there's a few windows that face the street, make sure there's a lamp on so the house doesn't look dark and crappy, because people will stalk your house once it goes on the market. They're going to drive by after dinner or, at night and check out the neighborhood. And if your house looks all warm and homey from the street, they're going to want to check it out inside. If they've already loved the pictures and then they drive through the neighborhood and that sells, they're comfortable there. If you drive by and the house is pitch black, I don't know, they'll probably still come, but I don't know. That's the feeling of excitement. So things like that, I think, make a really big difference. And because it's very true that sellers or buyers stock listings. I say that with a positive spin. So that's kind of one of the ways I kind of stage the outside. Mulch is always great. It hides a lot of sins and makes the yard look clean, making sure the bushes and things are pruned and that the lawn is mowed. I had a seller recently who was like, well, we don't really want to mow the lawn. Well, the lawn is long and it needs to be mowed. And I was able to get them a contractor or a lawn service that was like a one-man show, and he was pretty inexpensive, and he came every week all summer and has mowed it. And he mowed it for the last time because we're going to be closing in about a week, and it looks great. And they commented about how great the house looks. They're not even here anymore, and their neighbors took a picture of their house after he mowed, and they were like, wow, our house looks fantastic. And I was like, all he did was mow. So it was, you know, those little details make a big difference. The other thing, like having the driveway sealed, if it's, you know, hasn't been sealed in a couple of years, also can make a huge difference. It makes it look like you've maintained the property, which buyers are very concerned with. That goes along with the mulch and the weeding and the trimming and things like that. Other things that I recommend in that list is having the furnace and air conditioning serviced. You know, it's like $150. Money well spent to know that everything's good or that something needs to be replaced. And if it needs to be replaced, you can shop around for a deal. If you wait and it comes up in the inspection, the buyer may tell you who they want you to use, and it may be the highest quote. And so now you've spent more than just having it fixed on the initially. And it makes the buyers, again, it makes them feel like you've taken good care of the house, and it makes them feel a little more comfortable. And especially with a lot of buyers going over asking, they are justifying how high they want to go based on a lot of those factors, right?
And especially with waiving engineers inspections these
Right.
days too. It gives them more of a peace of mind to be able to do that. You know,
So,
if you've got documentation that things have been completed.
yep, and I upload it as an attachment so the agents can see it. I do a property binder, which includes like property condition disclosure, MLS sheets, lead if the house was before 78. I always print out the true tax from the county or the city so that they have it right there. And then any maintenance or a list of updates. All of those things I appreciate when I go in as a buyer's agent, because I don't know the house. I haven't met the seller. I haven't heard all the wonderful things they've done to the house. And so if I have a little bit of a list as we're walking through, it's helpful to say, oh, they replaced the windows a year ago and they use this company. Oh, and it has a transferable warranty. You know, you can only fit so much in 800 characters. So there's certain things that just won't make your listing, like transferable warranty sometimes. So it's helpful, I would say. So who has questions now that we've kind of covered a little snip of everything?
With staging, is the cost going from the agent or the seller?
The seller.
Okay.
Most of the time, yeah. Now, I mean, if I'm doing it myself and I'm using my own stuff, then clearly I went to Marshall's and bought something that I thought would work. I have a few Rubbermaid bins in my basement of things I've seen. You know, the end cap at Target, you see some candles and they're, you know, $3. They look really nice. I'll throw those in the bin just to, not even to light, just to group on a coffee table or, you know, a counter. One of the things my photographer likes is he doesn't, or dislikes, is that he doesn't like the counter is completely cleaned off. He likes it to look a little lived in, and that's important because, you know, again, an empty house does not sell nearly as well as a home that's furnished and decorated.
I have a question. If you have somebody who's listing their house and let's say they don't want to stage and their house is lived in and they don't they haven't found another home. They don't want to move things into pods and they just kind of want to sell it as is. I'm sure people run into that. I've seen houses listed with lots of furnishing and existing, you know, decor and, you know, so I know it makes it difficult to kind of imagine the space as yours when it's already decorated by the people who are trying to sell it. But if it, I mean, that I can see as being presenting as something challenging to, you know, to either sell and or photograph. How do you deal with something like that if they're not willing to do much to their home?
Well, one of my tricks getting around that is I always tell them subconsciously when a buyer sees a few boxes in a closet, whether they're filled with stuff or empty, they subconsciously know that the seller is, you know, motivated or ready to move. So that is the, you know, one of the tips that I'll give them. And I mean, if they have a garage, maybe a few things could be moved out to the garage. And sometimes I'll say, well, the photographer is going to want to be able to get this shot, or I really love the view from here. So if we move the couch just a little over, it'll make the pictures and the room feel bigger. So I try to give them more constructive feedback that what they have is still really nice. We just need to repurpose it or move it around. But if they don't and the house shows poorly, then the price is slightly different because, you know, you're not going to get the same as a perfectly decorated house.
Okay.
You tell them you either can sell it for retail or wholesale.
I love that.
I love that. That's great.
We're all stealing that, Bob.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna use that. You know, other times I've used very similar. If you are expecting a premium price, the buyer expects to see premium decor or layout or, you know, whatever is the selling feature for that house. So that sometimes it's all making sure that they have perspective, I think. That's how I would answer that.
Another workaround I know we've used when I worked for Lisa Waston's team, you know, we'd have sellers that, you know, didn't want to take our advice, or they didn't want to declutter, or they didn't, you know, whatever the case may be, paint, if they've had some god awful colors, you know, such as a bright pink or bright purple or bright green or whatever. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll let that go, but then you know, getting feedback is so important. So I would just be diligent about reaching out to other agents and getting feedback, and just, you know, not even watering it down. And, you know, I know sometimes, you know, the feeling of, you know, shooting the messenger comes into play. But I'd always remind them that this isn't my feedback. This is feedback from, you know, the people that are out there looking to purchase a house. So sometimes that even helps too, if they hear the same thing again and again and again.
Yeah, feedback is great.
I have a question that I've heard that the seasoned agents, if they know that you're new, that sometimes if you're going up against them in a, you know, in a contract, or, you know, and do you ever feel, or have you ever encountered any of them trying to intimidate you or take advantage of you because you're new and not as seasoned?
So I think he's mulling.
Yeah, I'm mulling.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important is that you learn as much as you can, and that you write a really good offer, that your contracts are impeccable, and then no one is going to challenge you. I think it was the summer after I became an agent. I wrote an offer. We got it, and the agent, when she called me, she goes, "That is one of the best contracts I've ever seen," you know. And then she just kept, you know, going on. And I said, "Well, I really appreciate that because I'm a new agent." And she said, "Well, you did a great job." So that's one of the things you're going to want to strive to do a great job. And what I've heard from some new agents is that, okay, they're learning more than some of the seasoned agents know. And so when the seasoned agent asks them for something and they kind of challenge it, it's like, well, I've been in real estate for 30 years. But so just make sure that, you know, you go to the trainings, you get trained well, you write good offers. You guys all have launch partners that, you know, are very happy to go over any offers, your listing contracts with you, so you can make sure that they're, you know, impeccable. And
Right.
you have tons of people to ask questions of.
And that was a big part of our advice for you, Ron,
Yes, it
was
was.
making sure that a couple of people reviewed your contract because you were really nervous that you were going to be the person to screw it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
So, which we've all been there.
Which is great. So I know Kaylee's my mentor and her launch partner, and she reviewed, I think, at least a couple of times and made a couple of good suggestions. And whenever we finally submitted it, that was something that I did get feedback from the other listing agent that we wrote a very, very good contract. It was very strong. And then I also, when I submitted it, I wrote a quick email to her saying that we're submitting the offer and here it is. And I think you're going to be very pleased with that we're submitting such a strong offer on this house. So it went a long way. So utilize all the help that you have in KW to review things. So
one of the things that I started doing recently, and I know I got this from somebody and I can't remember who. So since there's almost always multiple offers, you want to make it as easy for the listing agent as possible. Where before I pretty much always would just take the email that I got back from transaction desk and forward it to them and say, click the link to download the listing. So what I've been doing recently is I've been downloading the listing, uploading it directly so that it's an attachment. And I've put together a summary for them, which I've now turned into a template. So I have in the subject line, you know, offer for, and I have the address. And then I put a please acknowledge, because I always realized I kept forgetting to ask people to do that. And you can create a template in Gmail really, really easily. And you can ask me how to do that if you don't know how. And so I'll say, you know, here's the offer for your listing at blah from my contacts, blah. You know, the purchase price is this with an escalation up to this in increments of, and tell them what kind of a mortgage it is, you know, whether property inspection is requested or not, what the closing date is. And I think that makes it easier for them because in some cases, oh my God, I mean, people are getting, the norm is 10 offers now, I think. What was it, a couple months ago, 2-3 months ago, one of the friend team's listings had 51 offers.
Yeah,
Oh
my
51.
Wow.
Imagine sorting
Yeah.
through that.
So I'm not going to say Avant. Oh, yeah. Actually, I talked to Abby about that specifically today because my city listing is been very busy.
Mhm.
So, and I was asking how did you manage it? I said, I don't want to figure it out on the fly. What would you do differently? And she was so nice to give me some tips and what she would have done from the beginning. Now they didn't know that that house was going to be that hot. So, but going back to your question about, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. I mean, I think there are some agents that might look at your number and, you know, your MLS number and say, oh, they're new. And, but again, if you're trained and you're writing really good contracts, most of the time you're going to get a compliment back. Or even some feedback like, hey, you wrote a great contract. Again, just builds the relationships, because the more we have relationships with agents and they know that we get the job done, we communicate well, they may recommend your offer to be accepted, because it might be that the deal, the client, the seller, let's say, wants a really smooth transaction, and you've been on the other side and they're like, you know what, this person communicates well, it's worth $2,000 less to take this deal because I know that we'll get it to the closing table with the least amount of stress for you. There was, go ahead, Kim.
The other piece of this too is, you could present it in such a way that, nobody really has to know that you're new. I mean, your number will indicate, your MLS number, your MLS ID number will indicate that you're new, but you could always present it in such a way like, me and my team, because in a sense, you guys with your launch partners are in fact a team. So, if you need to use that to sell that, then use that to your advantage. I mean, that's part of the program and that's why we're here. So,
So a quick funny story with a happy ending. So I had clients look at a house that had been on the market for a very long time. We wrote an offer and it was accepted, and it got to attorney approval and got killed because they had another offer come in. And when I called the agent and said, hey, well, we'd love the opportunity to bring our offer up or change something to, still remain competitive. And she was, oh, the other offer is great. We're not worried about it. And I said, well, would you be willing to accept a backup offer? Because my clients really wanted that house. And she said, no, I've been doing this forever, like 40 years, and I've never needed a backup offer. I'm not going to worry about it. I said, okay. So we ended the call, and a week later, I get a call from her, and she says, the deal fell through. And I said, well, that's interesting. And her response was, this is going to be painful, isn't it? And I said, a little bit. And we actually offered them almost $30,000 less than what we had offered initially. And we ended up settling $15,000 less than our initial offer. And if she had accepted our backup, she would have locked us into that higher price.
Wow.
And wouldn't have even had to worry about it. So that transaction finished, and we have now had coffee multiple times. And she now says, okay, so how are you doing this? And how are you doing that? And so now she's seeing that maybe I was, extending an olive branch, and as a new agent, that I had learned something that maybe she didn't, wasn't aware of or hadn't done before. And that if she had, it would have been a lot better for her and her clients. So I think as long as you're professional and come from a point of a place of contribution, I think that new agent stigma will disappear.
I agree.
Thank you.
Who else has questions?
Who makes the call on a backup offer? Like who does the agent or does the seller make the call on whether or not to have a backup offer?
So, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I recommend, and when I do my listing presentation, I tell them that if they get multiple offers, we're going to accept two. We're going to accept the best, and then we're going to accept the second best, because we don't know if that person bid on another house and didn't get it, and that deal falls through, but that was their number one choice, and they're going to, you know, kill this one to go. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of variables. And with COVID, with people losing their jobs and stuff, I just feel more secure knowing that it's there in the background. Now, the backup offer can leave at any time. So if they find a house, they just walk away. That's in the language, and that you can find that language in the clauses and transaction desk that Chris has been so nice to put in there. So you don't have to, you know, rewrite it every time. It's just there waiting for you. So it pretty much says that you're accepting the offer, and it's based on non-performance of the first offer accepted within so many days, normally like 14 if there's an inspection, or maybe, you know, appraisal. You know, you kind of look at the dates and the contingencies and say, okay, we want to stretch it out to here. And it says you as the buyer have the right to, if you find another property, you can back out at any time. So I actually used, so the same people that we got the house that they were happy, we had a backup offer on their house. And in the midst of COVID in March, March, April, we started to feel that the buyer wasn't going to complete the transaction. And it was actually based on lack of communication from the other agent. I could not get an update for anything. And finally, we got to the closing date, and it wasn't, they didn't meet the closing date. And so we issued time of essence, and I had already spoken to the backup offer, and they hadn't found a house. And so my person was going to lose maybe $3,000, but they didn't have to put their house back up on the market. They weren't going to lose the house that they were contingent, you know, on buying. And it solidified their peace of mind and mine. So, and I was able to leverage it against that first offer and say, we have this backup. So, you know, either, you know, get to the table.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of nice to have that to use to protect them. I also find that if you do a backup offer and there's an inspection involved, the first offer doesn't ask for as much, because they know that at any point you just don't, if you don't respond, you could just take the second offer, right? So again, it's kind of like subconsciously they know that there's someone else right there waiting for them to walk away. So they know that the seller's motivation is to sell the house, but that they have options, and so that they're not the only person that's going to buy the house or could buy the house. Would you agree on that, Bob?
Yeah, I like the idea. I've never done that with backup offers, but I think it's a good idea, and yeah, I would agree with you.
I don't use it always. Like, you know, if you get a cash offer and 30-day close. And,
I mean, if I'm,
I mean, it really doesn't make no inspection, no appraisal, and there's really no contingencies.
I have done it more with buyers than I have sellers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I need to go.
Okay.
Have fun.
See you later.
Nice seeing you guys.
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
Bye.
What other questions can we answer?
I have a question about the fact that the market's really hot right now, and so you have a lot of competition, obviously, on because it's basically a seller's market, right? And so I've got two questions actually. If you have a listing and you have, I mean, I guess it depends on the timing of the offers coming in from the buyers, but how long do you wait? Let's say you get one offer tonight, and then maybe tomorrow you end up with 2 or 3 or 4, but they keep coming in. How do you prioritize the best offer for the seller? Do you wait a certain period of time before the seller makes a decision on which offer is going to be their primary best offer, and then like a backup offer? You know what I'm saying? Or
right. basically, so when an offer comes in, I like to just send it right on to them, because if it is a hot property and there's a lot of showings, they've been inconvenienced to get out of the house for hours and hours at a time, right? So if they start seeing some good offers, it makes it feel like it's worth it, and they just keep they're on the hamster wheel until it depends on if you have delayed negotiations, because if you have delayed negotiations, you can review the offers. You can't accept an offer they likes to use. So regardless if they see it, you're waiting. In Command, you can add all your offers in the opportunity, and you can put the pros and cons, and you can actually send that to them electronically. I think you can print it as well. And so, really you're looking at price, if that's what is important to your seller. And then you're looking at terms, and sometimes the terms beat the price. If you are the listing agent and you know that they have to move in 45 days, you're going to want to look for the offer that's the strongest, that's going to get to that finish line. And then you let the seller decide which, they would feel. We're here as a resource to guide them. They still are the most confident with, based on the education that we've provided them.
I have a question. You keep saying strong offers. What does that constitute? What does that mean exactly?
So I would say strong offers are an offer with probably an escalation clause that's going quite high, large earnest money deposits. Ron, I think you put a pretty big deposit in yours, right?
Yes, very significant. We did quite a large amount.
Yeah, I've written contracts with 25, like almost their whole down payment as the earnest money deposit, which is just showing how committed they are to getting to the closing table, because they were so desperate to get a house. You're going to look at like the appraisal repair line. Sometimes you'll make that 0, so that if the appraisal says, or the appraiser says, okay, this railing needs to be fixed. Well, it's in the contract that the seller is not going to fork out any more money. Same with, inspection repairs, making sure that is a lower number if you're going up against multiple offers. So those are kind of I would say the basic framework of a strong offer. And then it comes down to terms, closing date, lender comes down a lot. I beat out a cash offer on a house in Greece, and the agent's response was, well, you're going through premium, that's practically cash, so we're not going to worry about it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay. And we beat out a cash offer that was higher, but they felt that we were going to get to the closing table. So, it is, so those things make it a strong offer. Do you have anything to add, Bob?
Not really. I think sometimes it comes down to, who the agent is. If you've worked with the agent before and they're going to get the job done and they're going to communicate well, and if you have 2 offers that are pretty close and one of the agents and their work and how hard they're going to make things go to the closing table and get it all done, you might pick that person versus an unknown. Which I want to take a minute to go back to another point you made. And one of the things that is, I think, important as a newer agent is to not be afraid to meet other agents. And in one of the comments, Jeffrey, you made about looking at a lot of houses, if you go out every Saturday and every Sunday and go to as many open houses as you can go to, you're going to meet agents and you're going to see the inventory. And both of those things are going to be helpful.
They don't mind that then?
Oh, heck no.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
Just identify yourself so they're not trying to pick you up as a prospect.
Okay.
Right.
Of course. Right. Okay.
Well, you'd be
Yeah.
surprised. Sometimes they don't.
Right. So yeah, no, I mean, in the post-COVID world, it's a little more difficult, you know, because Sherry, you've been to what, 1, 2, 3, 4 open houses or 3
Yeah.
open houses with me.
4. I think
And
4.
I mean, we've all seen the line, you know, at the curb waiting to
Yes.
come in. So it's a little more difficult on really super hot properties, but you can always make you could always make an appointment and say that you're doing a, it's in showing time. It's like a preview for a buyer.
Also, there's starting to be more brokers open
Sometimes you
houses.
can do that.
And that
Just
would
let
be,
the agent know that that's what you're doing. What did you say, Bob?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's also starting to
No,
be
that's
more brokers open houses. And so if the
Yes.
newer agents have their mentors, keep them abreast of brokers opens that are coming up, that's another option for sure.
And sometimes you get free lunch. Most of the time you get free lunch.
Yeah, there's that.
There's that too. I always like the Twilight where they're like, we're serving wine. So.
All right, I gotta scoot, guys. I will see you later.
Have a good night, Kim.
I have to also.
All right.
Bye, Kim.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So that's fine because I had a hard stop at 7. So if there's no more questions, we'll table it till next month. And as always, reach out and ask questions. We're all here as a resource.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's great.
Have a good night.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.